So imagine you are playing a real-time strategy game. You've built up your base, organized your units.
Right, getting everything perfectly set up.
Exactly. And suddenly, you see an enemy flank attacking your most valuable resource node.
Ah, the worst feeling.
Yeah. So you snap your mouse over, you highlight your heavy cavalry, and you click to send reinforcements. But there's a catch. Your controller has a 50,000-year input lag.
Oh, wow. A 50,000-year lag.
Yeah, by the time that single click actually registers in the game, the battle hasn't just ended. Your gaming console has turned to dust, the house you were sitting in has eroded into dirt, and an entirely new geological epoch has started outside your window.
Which perfectly illustrates the absolute absurdity of trying to command anything across the void of space.
Right.
Because when we talk about interstellar governance, I mean, that 50,000-year lag is not a metaphor. It is the literal physical reality of sending a simple radio message from the center of our galaxy to the edge.
It's just mind-bending. And I'm so glad you're here with us for this deep dive, because whether you are prepping for a sci-fi book club, trying to win a late-night debate, or you are just insanely curious about how the universe actually works, you are definitely in the right place.
Absolutely.
Because today we are going to completely shatter an illusion that pretty much all of us grew up with. We look up at the night sky and we project our own human history onto the stars. We see all that space and we just, we see territory.
Right, we draw a line on a map, put down a flag, and say, this is mine.
Exactly.
It is deeply ingrained in us. We assume the future of humanity in space will just be, the British Empire or the Roman Empire, but with shinier ships.
Yeah, cool.
We look at the sprawling, unified galactic empires in movies and books, like Emperor Palpatine ruling a whole galaxy in Star Wars.
Or the Imperium of Man in Warhammer 40K.
Exactly. Or the Padisha Emperor in Dune. They all share this one core assumption.
Which is what exactly?
That an individual can sit on a throne world somewhere and issue a decree that reshapes the lives of trillions of people across millions of planets.
And the sources we are unpacking today completely dismantle that assumption. We have a genuinely fascinating stack of cosmological and physical analyses in front of us.
Really incredible stuff.
Yes, specifically focusing on three texts. We've got the absolute limits of interstellar dominion, the architecture of cosmic sovereignty, and the light speed barrier, and the limits of galactic empire.
A heavy lineup.
It is. And just to set the tone for you right out of the gate, we are not looking at this through the lens of politics,
Right,
or economics, or whether an emperor is a good or bad thing. We are looking strictly at the hard, unavoidable laws of physics and space-time.
because the universe simply does not care about our political ambitions.
Yeah, it really doesn't.
And the mechanism enforcing that apathy is something we interact with every single day. The absolute limit that any would-be cosmic emperor hits first is the speed of light.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we all know light is fast, right? We flip a switch and the room illuminates instantly.
Right.
But to understand why it destroys empires, we need to understand what the speed of light actually represents in physics.
So we are talking about Parley, the speed of light in a vacuum, which sits at approximately 300,000 kilometers per second.
Which sounds incredibly fast.
It is. But in science fiction, this is usually treated as just a mild inconvenience.
Yeah, like a speed bump.
Exactly. It's portrayed as a technological hurdle waiting for a clever engineer to invent a hyperdrive.
Right.
But our sources emphasize that this is not a technological limitation. It is a fundamental geometric property of the universe itself.
Wow. Geometric property.
Yeah. Special relativity tells us that the speed of light is essentially the speed of causality. It is the maximum speed at which any two parts of the universe can interact or influence each other.
Okay, let me push back on that for a second, because our listeners probably thinking of all the classic sci-fi workarounds right now.
Oh, of course.
What about wormholes? Or an Alcubierre warp drive where you literally fold space? Or quantum entanglement, where two particles spin and sync instantly across the universe? Surely a sufficiently advanced alien race figured out a cheat code for that.
It's a great question, but the texts explicitly rule those out by looking at the underlying physics.
Okay, how so?
Let us take quantum entanglement first, because that is honestly the most common misconception. Yes, you can entangle two particles, and measuring one instantly determines the state of the other no matter the distance.
Right, Einstein's spooky action at a distance.
Exactly. But the laws of quantum mechanics forbid you from using that process to transmit usable information.
Wait, really? Why not?
Because you cannot force the particle into a specific state to send a Morse code message. The outcome is always random. You only know the states correlate after comparing them using a normal light speed message.
So it is like having two magic dice that always roll the same number at the same time, but you cannot force them to roll a 6 to send a signal to your friend.
Precisely. That's a perfect way to put it. The randomness protects the speed of light.
Okay, what about wormholes and warp drives then?
Well, the math of general relativity technically allows for the geometry of a wormhole. But to keep a wormhole open, or to warp space around a ship without crushing it, you require something called exotic matter.
Exotic matter.
Yes, matter with a negative energy density.
Negative energy, which, just to be clear, isn't just antimatter, right?
No.
It's something that literally has less than zero mass.
Yes, and every observational test in modern physics suggests that macroscopic quantities of negative energy simply cannot exist.
Huh.
Even if you somehow created it, the energy requirements to fold spacetime are on the scale of consuming entire stars.
Wow.
But more importantly, if you create a way to travel faster than light, special relativity dictates that you have also created a time machine.
Wait, a time machine? How does that work?
You could send a message that arrives before descent, violating causality. And the universe appears to strictly forbid paradoxes. The speed limit was set before the first star ignited, and no royal decree can override it.
Meaning, we really have to play by the rules of the board here. So let's run the actual numbers on this, because the scale is just staggering.
It really is.
The Milky Way galaxy is roughly 100,000 light years in diameter. A light year is the distance light travels in one Earth year, which is about 9.4 trillion kilometers.
A massive distance.
Right. And our sun sits in the Orion arm, roughly 26,000 light years from the galactic supermassive black hole at the center.
So imagine an emperor establishes a capital world at the very center of the Milky Way,
Okay.
and a colony on the outer edge stops paying its taxes.
As colonies do.
Naturally. The emperor sends a radio signal traveling at the absolute maximum speed the universe allows, saying, "Pay your taxes or else." That signal takes 50,000 years just to reach the colony.
And the colony sends back a message saying, "Come make us." That is another 50,000 years, a 100,000-year round trip just for a single exchange of dialogue.
Exactly.
And that is purely communication. If the emperor actually wants to enforce his will, he has to send a physical fleet.
And physical ships cannot travel at the speed of light because they have mass. As an object with mass accelerates closer to the speed of light, the energy required to accelerate it further approaches infinity.
Right, it gets heavier and heavier, essentially.
Essentially, yes. But let us be generous and assume this empire has spectacularly advanced starships traveling at 10% the speed of light.
Which is insanely fast.
It's 30,000 kilometers per second. But even at that speed, it would take that fleet 500,000 years to reach the rebellious colony.
I want you to really internalize what 100,000 years of communication lag means. Think about human history.
All of it.
Yeah, all of recorded human history. The Egyptian Old Kingdom, the invention of the wheel, the rise and fall of the Roman Empire, the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution, the moon landing.
Every single thing we remember.
All of it fits into a window of about 5,000 years.
Human civilization is just a blink in this context.
A single round-trip text message across the Milky Way takes 20 times longer than the entire recorded history of the human race.
It's incomprehensible.
You send a message asking for a status report from the outer rim, and 20 entire human histories rise and fall before your phone buzzes with a reply.
Which leads the author of The Absolute Limits of Interstellar Dominion to a brutal conclusion.
Let's hear it.
A galactic empire cannot, in any meaningful sense, govern. It can only broadcast.
Wow. It can only broadcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
An emperor who sends a command to a distant sector will never, ever see the reply.
So let's bring this down to a practical level. Let's do the math on what is actually possible.
Okay.
If a central authority needs to issue an order, and they want to see the result of that order within their own lifetime, let's call it a single human generation, about 25 years.
That's a reasonable timeline for a ruler.
Right. What is the actual physical size limit of their empire?
The math from our sources gives us a very clear, inflexible boundary. If your maximum allowable communication lag is a 25-year round trip, you simply divide that by 2.
Okay.
Your empire is mathematically limited to a radius of exactly 12.5 light years.
12.5 light years. That is it. That is the maximum volume of space where a central government can have a real-time conversation with its colonies.
Yes.
And how much real estate is actually in a 12.5 light-year radius? Like, what are we talking about here?
In our local stellar neighborhood, a sphere of that size contains roughly 50 stars.
50.
Just 50.
And most of them are small, dim, red dwarfs.
50 stars. The absolute maximum size of a real-time, politically unified empire under known physics is 50 stars.
Correct.
Even if you colonize every single rock, moon, and asteroid in that radius, your galactic empire is just a tiny speck. It's a stellar commonwealth, maybe.
Exactly. It is impressive on a human scale, but on a cosmic scale, it is a rounding error.
That's wild.
Tight, centralized control, the absolute monarchy we see in pop culture, is entirely impossible beyond that 12.5 light-year bubble. But wait, empires on Earth have dealt with massive communication lag before.
They have.
When I was reading these sources, my mind immediately went to the Roman Empire.
A classic example.
Right, because they had weeks of communication lag between Rome and Britannia. And the British Empire had months of lag for sailing ships traveling to and from Australia or India.
Yes, months at sea.
And those empires functioned. They didn't micromanage everything. They delegated. They set up governors, viceroys, and local magistrates.
It's decentralized.
Yeah. So why couldn't a galactic emperor just say, okay, I can't issue real-time orders, but I will appoint local governors to rule a sphere of 500 light years in my name?
This raises an important question, and it transitions us from the physical limits of light to the sociological limits of time.
Okay.
The sources explore this under the concept of the Federation limit. The earthly empires you mentioned managed weeks or months of lag, but scaling that lag to centuries or millennia breaks the fundamental definition of a political entity.
Oh, so, let's construct that 500 light-year radius federation.
All right. A sphere with a 500 light-year radius is substantial. It contains about 4 million stars.
Okay, now that sounds like a proper, formidable empire.
It does. But a 500 light-year radius means a 1,000-year round trip for any communication between the frontier and the capital.
1,000 years of lag. That's steep.
Let us play out a scenario from the text. A localized rebellion starts on the outer rim of this federation.
Okay.
The local governor tries to suppress it, fails, and sends a distress signal to the capital world. That signal takes 500 years to arrive.
Assuming the central government even exists in the same form after 5 centuries. I mean, think about Earth 500 years ago.
Right, the 1500s.
Yeah, that was the 1500s. If someone in the 1500s sent a message to modern-day London asking for military support, the modern government wouldn't even recognize the political authority of the sender.
That is the core of the issue. But let us give the empire the benefit of the doubt and assume remarkable institutional stability.
A very stable throne.
Yes. The emperor receives the message, deliberates, and dispatches a massive suppression fleet. Okay, that fleet, traveling at a generous fraction of light speed, takes perhaps another 500 years to reach the outer rim.
So a full millennium has passed since the rebellion actually started.
Exactly. The original rebels are dead. Their great-great-great-great-grandchildren are dead. The colony has had 1,000 years to evolve.
They might have changed governments 10 times by then.
They might have entirely forgotten the original cause of the rebellion. Or, over 1,000 years, they might have industrialized their entire local star cluster and grown into a rival empire that completely dwarfs the original suppression fleet.
Oh man, the text had a brilliant line about this. It pointed out that the soldiers arriving on those ships wouldn't be conquerors, they would be archaeologists.
That is a very striking way to phrase it.
They would be studying a civilization that ended centuries before they even arrived. They are literally responding to a ghost.
The entire concept of governance requires a sonner that can learn of a problem, decide on a course of action, and execute that action before the problem has fundamentally transformed.
Right.
Coherence decays at the edges.
I mean, imagine sending an urgent email to a client, but the reply doesn't come back to you. The reply goes to your great-great-great-grandchildren.
It's absurd.
How could you possibly maintain a unified corporate culture in that scenario, let alone a unified set of interstellar laws or a common religion?
You cannot. The British Empire is a great microexample of this.
Oh, how so?
Even with only a months-long communication lag, the British continually had to grant increasing autonomy to places like Canada and Australia because they simply could not react fast enough to local crises.
Right, they had to let them govern themselves.
Exactly. Eventually, the empire functionally broke apart into a loose commonwealth. At a 500-year lag, empire is a complete fiction. Each star system, by sheer necessity of survival, becomes an independent, sovereign civilization.
So direct real-time control is physically impossible. Delegated loose federations shatter over time because 1,000 years of lag destroys coherence.
Yes.
But, well, what if a civilization simply does not care about control?
What do you mean?
What if humanity or some alien race just relentlessly expands? They build generation ships, point them in every direction, and just continuously launch them outward.
Just spreading seeds.
Exactly.
Well,
Even if they aren't politically reporting back to Earth, wouldn't they eventually fill the galaxy with one continuous culture? Just a giant, sprawling diaspora of Earthlings.
what's fascinating here is that the physics of colonization actually allow for this kind of physical spread.
Really?
Yes, the math is surprisingly optimistic regarding our ability to physically reach every star.
We could physically colonize the entire Milky Way.
Absolutely. Let us look at relativistic colonization waves. Imagine a civilization perfects starships that can travel between 1% and 5% the speed of light.
Okay, that seems achievable eventually.
They launch a wave of colony ships to the nearest stars. Those ships arrive, settle the new solar systems, build up their industrial infrastructure over a few centuries, and then those new colonies launch their own wave of ships deeper into the galaxy.
Like a ripple in a pond, just slowly moving outward from the center.
Precisely. To fill the entire Milky Way galaxy, which is 100,000 light years across, using the stop-and-go method at around 1% the speed of light, it would take roughly 5 million years.
5 million years.
Yeah,
Wow, I mean, that sounds like an eternity to a human being.
it does. But on a cosmic scale, it is nothing.
Right.
The Milky Way is over 13 billion years old. 5 million years is a fraction of a percent of the galaxy's lifespan. A determined, patient species could absolutely seed the entire galaxy.
Okay, but there's a catch, right?
There is a severe consequence to this process, which the text calls the entropy of meaning.
Entropy of meaning.
Over 5 million years of silent void, these isolated colonies are subjected to extreme cultural and biological drift.
And it's the ultimate game of telephone, stretched out over millions of years and trillions of miles.
Because even if those colonists leave Earth with the exact same constitution, the exact same legal code, and the exact same moral philosophy, none of it survives that magnitude of time.
It just degrades.
The text puts it beautifully. It says the empire's law reaches the colony's lawyers long after the empire's philosophy has ceased to make sense to anyone living.
Think about the English language. If you go back just 1,000 years to Old English, to the original text of Beowulf, you can barely read a word of it.
Right, it's completely foreign.
It looks and sounds like a completely different language. Now stretch that linguistic drift over 5 million years. English wouldn't just be unrecognizable. The very neurological concepts of our modern society would be incomprehensible.
Exactly.
You couldn't enforce an earth law because the colony wouldn't even have the vocabulary to understand the premise of the law.
And the drift goes far deeper than just language or culture. It penetrates biology itself.
Wait, biology.
Yes, let us take an incredibly optimistic scenario and say, we build a ship traveling at 50% the speed of light.
Half the speed of light. That is an unbelievable engineering achievement.
It is incredibly fast.
Okay.
But even at that speed, crossing the full diameter of the galaxy takes 200,000 years. Do you know how long Homo sapiens have existed as a distinct species?
Roughly 300,000 years, I believe.
So the travel time alone is nearly the entire evolutionary lifespan of our species so far.
Oh, wow.
By the time that ship arrives at the far edge of the galaxy, the humanity they left behind on Earth has either gone extinct or they have evolved into an entirely new biological species in response to changing environments.
That is insane to think about.
Or, more likely, they have transitioned into a post-biological, machine-based intelligence.
So the colonists arrive at their destination, and they aren't even the same species as the people back home.
Exactly.
You can't have a unified empire if the citizens of the capital world literally have a different DNA structure than the citizens of the frontier. You couldn't breed with them, you couldn't eat the same food, you probably couldn't even survive in the same atmospheric pressure.
You do not have an empire. You do not even have a single civilization. You have a diaspora.
A diaspora.
A vast scattering of seeds that share a common ancient origin, perhaps a fading myth of a blue planet called Earth. But they can never be reunified. They are completely separate, distinct alien entities to one another.
Okay, so you have this galaxy filled with life, but it is totally fragmented.
Fragmented beyond repair.
Now, let me play devil's advocate here. Because even if you accept that all these colonies are entirely independent, they have their own cultures, their own unreadable languages, and their own biology, there are still physical locations in space.
They are.
You might think, okay, we can't govern them, but we can at least map them. We can have a grand galactic map of a million independent worlds. We can set up trade routes.
It sounds logical.
But our sources point out that the universe won't even let you have a static map.
The physical reality of the galaxy completely destroys the illusion of static geography. We hit the phenomenon of stellar drift.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because when we think of a map, like a map of the Earth, you put a pin in New York, you put a pin in London, and they stay there. The geography is fixed by the tectonic plates, which move incredibly slowly relative to human lifespans. But a star map is completely different. The galaxy is in constant, violent motion.
If we connect this to the orbital mechanics of the Milky Way, the stars are not simply hanging stationary in a void. Everything is orbiting the supermassive black hole at the galactic center, and they are doing so at different speeds depending on their distance from the core.
So they are all racing around the center.
Yes. Our sun is moving at roughly 220 kilometers per second along its orbital path.
220 kilometers per second, every single second.
So over the course of 5 million years, which remember is the time it takes to physically colonize the galaxy, the sun will physically move 3,600 light years from its current starting position.
That's a massive distance.
Over 100 million years, it moves 72,000 light years. That is nearly the entire circumference of the galaxy.
This completely ruins the idea of interstellar trade routes. I mean, imagine you spend 1,000 years setting up a beautifully designed hub-and-spoke trade network with your neighboring star systems.
A very organized system.
Right. You say, okay, Alpha Centauri is our trading partner to our left, Sirius is to our right. We will build specialized cargo ships for these exact distances.
Yeah.
But over deep time, those stars are physically drifting apart.
Yes.
They're on completely different orbital tracks around the galaxy, moving at different velocities.
Furthermore, stars move in 3 dimensions, bobbing up and down through the galactic plane. Neighbors become distant strangers.
They just drift away.
The beautifully organized network simply dissolves into a tangled, shifting web. Without faster-than-light travel to compensate for these shifting distances, any economic structure you build is going to be ripped apart by the relentless choreography of galactic rotation.
Let me push back again, because I know someone listening is thinking this exact thing right now.
Go ahead.
Fine, the stars move. We can calculate their trajectories.
Yeah.
We have telescopes. If the distances get too far for physical cargo ships, we don't have to send physical goods. We are living in the information age. We can just blast lasers at each other to stay in touch.
A galactic internet.
Exactly. A massive galactic internet. You just point a massive laser at a colony, account for its orbital movement, and hit send on a data packet.
It is a fantastic concept, but the sources give us the exact mathematical breakdown of why this fails as well. It comes down to a fundamental principle of physics called diffraction.
Diffraction, the spreading of light waves.
Yes. We tend to think of lasers as perfectly straight, infinitely thin beams of light.
Like in the movies.
Right. But light is a wave, and quantum mechanics dictates that as a wave travels through space, it naturally propagates outward. It is a physical impossibility to perfectly collimate a beam.
So it always spreads out eventually.
Even the most perfectly focused laser in the universe spreads out over long distances. Let us look at the numbers the text provides. Imagine an incredibly advanced civilization builds a massive 10-meter-wide telescope specifically to fire a 1-megawatt laser.
A 1-megawatt laser fired out of a lens the size of a 3-story building. That is a massive, highly focused beam.
Extremely powerful. And they aim it at a colony 1,000 light years away. Because of diffraction, by the time that beam travels through the vacuum of space for 1,000 years, the edges of that wave have spread outward enormously. How wide do you think that beam is when it finally arrives at the colony?
I mean, I've used laser pointers for presentations. They get a little blurry and wide across a large auditorium. So across 1,000 light years, it has to be huge. A few thousand miles wide, maybe the size of the Earth.
It is 470 million kilometers wide.
Wait, hold on. Let me think about that scale.
It's massive.
The distance from the Earth to the sun is about 150 million kilometers. So this single laser beam is wider than the orbit of the Earth around the sun.
It is larger than the entire orbit of Mars.
Wow.
That single focused beam has washed out over an area of space larger than our inner solar system, and because the beam has spread out so massively, the original 1 megawatt of energy is completely diluted across that entire 470 million kilometer canvas.
So it's incredibly weak by the time it gets there.
The power density drops to less than a billionth of a watt per square meter.
So to actually receive that message To catch enough photons to decode the data packet, you can't just set up a satellite dish on your roof.
You would need to build a receiver the size of an entire planet just to read a single email.
A planet-sized receiver.
And that is only across 1,000 light years. If you want to send a message across the full 100,000 light-year diameter of the galaxy, the diffraction makes the signal indistinguishable from the cosmic background noise.
The text notes that the only way to effectively communicate across true galactic distances with enough power to overcome diffraction is to use the most energetic events in the universe.
Like supernovas.
Yeah, we're talking about intentionally detonating a star in a supernova or harnessing a gamma ray burst just to blink a binary message.
Which is not a communication network. That is a galaxy-consuming mega engineering project destroying entire solar systems just to say hello.
It's totally impractical.
It's simply not a viable infrastructure for governance or a cohesive society.
So up to this point, we have only been talking about our local neighborhood. We have only been talking about the Milky Way galaxy.
Just our own backyard.
The speed of light, the loss of cultural coherence, biological drift, the shifting map of orbital mechanics, and the diffraction of light all prove that you cannot even govern a single galaxy.
Correct.
But, well, what happens when an emperor looks up past the Milky Way into the deep black and decides they want to conquer the rest of the universe? They want an intergalactic empire.
This brings us to the ultimate constraint. If we connect this to the bigger picture of cosmology, the final enemy of a cosmic empire isn't distance, and it isn't time.
What is it?
It is the very fabric of the universe itself.
Let's scale up. The Milky Way is 100,000 light years across. The nearest major galaxy to us is Andromeda.
How far away is Andromeda?
Andromeda is approximately 2.5 million light years away.
2.5 million, and that is just our closest neighbor. And if you look further out to something like the Virgo cluster, which is a massive group of thousands of galaxies, you are looking at distances of tens of millions of light years.
So those crushing lag times we were just talking about, the 100,000-year delays that completely ruin an empire in the Milky Way suddenly become millions or tens of millions of years.
Exactly.
But according to the sources, the distance isn't even the real problem here. There is a cosmological mechanism that makes intergalactic empires physically impossible.
Yes. We have to introduce dark energy and the expansion of the universe.
Okay, let's really break this down, because this is where the physics gets incredibly mind-bending, and I want to make sure you listening completely grasp what is happening to the space around us.
We typically imagine the universe as a giant, static, empty box, and galaxies are just objects moving around inside that box.
Right.
But general relativity reveals that the box itself is stretching. Every cubic centimeter of the vacuum of space is expanding.
But wait, if space is expanding, why isn't my house expanding? Why isn't our solar system flying apart?
Because on a local scale, gravity is vastly stronger than the force of this expansion.
Oh, I see.
The gravity holding the Earth to the Sun and the gravity holding the Milky Way together easily overcomes the stretching of space. We are gravitationally bound to our local group of galaxies, which includes Andromeda.
Okay, so gravity is like a highly tensioned bungee cord keeping the local galaxies tied together, resisting the stretch.
Precisely. But when you venture beyond those gravitational bonds, when you look out into the deep universe at distant galaxy clusters, the expansion wins.
The gravity is too weak over those vast distances.
Yes. The gravity is too weak to hold things together. The galaxies out there are not just moving away from us through space. The actual fabric of space between us and them is growing. More space is constantly being created.
And here is the truly crushing part that the text emphasizes. Because the space is expanding uniformly everywhere, the further away a galaxy is, the faster it appears to be receding from us.
Exactly. It's a cumulative effect.
And for galaxies beyond a certain cosmological distance, the cumulative expansion of all the space between us means they are receding faster than the speed of light.
This is a crucial distinction. We established earlier that nothing can move through space faster than light.
Right, the speed limit.
But space itself can expand at any rate it wants to. It is a geometric loophole. Distant galaxies are not violating special relativity. They are relatively stationary in their own local space.
But the space between us is just ballooning.
Yes. The immense amount of space between us is stretching so rapidly that the distance between us increases at superluminal speeds.
So it is like, imagine you are trying to swing to an island. You are an incredibly strong swimmer, and you are swimming as fast as you physically can.
Okay.
But the water itself is stretching. The ocean is expanding faster than you can possibly paddle. You aren't just moving slowly. The geometry of the water mathematically forbids you from ever reaching the shore. Even if you swam for eternity, the distance to the island would keep increasing.
That is an excellent analogy. The expansion of the universe creates what astrophysicists call a cosmic event horizon.
An event horizon.
Yes. Beyond that horizon lies territory that is forever, permanently inaccessible to us. Not because our rockets aren't fast enough, not because we lack the political will or the economic resources.
But because of the geometry of space-time.
It is because the fundamental geometry of space-time forbids any interaction.
That is terrifying.
It is deeply humbling. A civilization could launch a ship today, traveling at 99.99% the speed of light, pointed straight at a galaxy beyond that horizon, and the ship will never, ever reach it.
Never.
The light from that ship will never reach it. Those galaxies are gone. They have crossed the horizon.
It gets worse, doesn't it? Because of dark energy.
Yes. Dark energy is the mysterious force that is actually accelerating the expansion of the universe. The rate of stretching is speeding up.
Accelerating.
Because the expansion is accelerating, that cosmic event horizon is actually shrinking closer to us over deep time. Every single day, more and more distant galaxies are pushed beyond that horizon, slipping out of reach forever.
So what are the implications for our hypothetical emperor who wants to rule the universe?
The implication is that a universal empire is mathematically impossible. The hard physical ceiling on any empire size is the observable universe at the exact moment the first signal or ship was sent.
And that ceiling is lowering.
Yes. And because that horizon is actively shrinking, the vast majority of the universe is permanently locked away. Even an empire spanning 1,000 light years, which we already proved is impossible to govern sociologically, would just be a tiny luminous bubble in an infinite expanding ocean of dark space.
A tiny bubble in the dark.
Yeah.
That is a completely different way to look at the night sky. The universe is actively walling us off.
It is isolating us.
But, if the laws of physics guarantee that a sprawling galactic empire is impossible and that every civilization is ultimately trapped in a localized bubble, well, this actually solves one of the greatest mysteries in modern science.
It absolutely does. We have to apply all of these constraints, the speed of light, coherence, drift, and expansion, to the Fermi paradox.
So what does this all mean? For you listening, if you aren't familiar, the Fermi paradox essentially asks, if the universe is so vast and so old, and the mathematical probability of life evolving on other planets is so high, where are all the aliens?
The Great Silence.
Right. Why don't we see a massive, galaxy-spanning alien civilization? Why don't we see Dyson spheres enclosing stars to harvest their energy? Why aren't there von Neumann probes, self-replicating machines, mining our asteroid belt? Why is the sky so totally, eerily quiet?
A lot of people look at the Fermi paradox and assume that the silence means we are entirely alone.
Yeah, that's the common fear.
The assumption is that either life is incredibly rare or that civilizations always destroy themselves with nuclear weapons or climate change before they can successfully colonize the stars. They assume a great filter wipes everyone out.
But based on the physics we've just discussed, that's not necessarily true at all. We don't need a tragic, great filter to explain the silence.
The sources make this point beautifully. The absence of a noisy, visible galactic empire is exactly what the laws of physics predict.
That is so cool.
Let us imagine an incredibly advanced alien species achieved spaceflight 500 million years ago. They survived their technological adolescence. They started colonizing the Milky Way using the exact 1% light speed ships we discussed earlier.
They would hit the exact same physical and sociological barriers we just outlined.
Precisely.
They hit the 12.5 light-year limit of real-time control. They hit the 1,000-year lag that shatters Federation coherence. They hit the 5 million-year timeline of cultural and biological drift.
They could not remain unified. They would have splintered into millions of independent, highly localized civilizations.
Separated by just vast gulfs of time and space.
And they would have evolved completely separately over millions of years. Their massive, centralized mega-engineering projects, like building a network of Dyson spheres, would have stalled because they couldn't coordinate the labor or the resources across the drifting star systems.
So an alien-colonized galaxy wouldn't look like Coruscant from Star Wars, bustling with centralized trade routes, giant space armadas, and a unified galactic senate.
No, not at all.
It would look exactly like what we currently see through our telescopes.
Yes.
A sparse, silent scattering of isolated worlds.
Yes.
Maybe occasionally, every few million years, one of those isolated worlds develops a burst of outward momentum and launches a new, slow wave of colonization. But overall, they stay local.
It completely reframes how we should view the cosmos. The universe isn't an empty metropolis waiting to be conquered, nor is it a graveyard of failed civilizations.
But what is it then?
It is a quiet diaspora. It is a realm of profound and beautiful silence where local civilizations are born, live out their entire majestic existence within their own tiny 12.5 light-year bubble, and never meet their distant cousins.
I want you to just sit with that paradigm shift for a second. The next time you look up at the night sky, don't look at it as an empty territory waiting for humanity to plant a flag.
It's not a conquerable space.
Look at it as a vast diaspora. Every star you see could harbor a civilization, and physics itself acts as the ultimate quarantine, keeping them safe, keeping them isolated, keeping them incredibly unique.
We have transitioned from the sci-fi dream of absolute power and infinite expansion to a much more mature reality, governed by the strict, unyielding laws of relativity, quantum diffraction, and cosmology.
Let's summarize the journey we've been on today. We started with the brutal math of the speed of light, finding that 12.5 light-year limit.
That tiny bubble.
Yeah, the tiny bubble of 50 stars where real-time 25-year generation control is actually possible.
Then we explored the Federation limit, showing how even if a society accepts centuries of communication lag, the empire decays into archaeology. The center cannot hold because the local cultures and politics change faster than the distress signals can arrive.
We saw how physically seeding the galaxy is entirely possible over a 5 million-year timeline, but that massive timeline guarantees the original culture will splinter.
Unavoidably.
They will drift biologically and linguistically into a million different unrecognizable species due to the sheer passage of deep time.
We navigated the moving map of stellar drift, where the stars themselves rearrange their positions at hundreds of kilometers per second over millions of years, physically tearing apart any fixed trade routes.
And we proved how the quantum mechanics of diffraction dilute laser communications, making a galactic internet impossible without planet-sized receivers.
And finally, we faced the ultimate cosmological barrier, the expanding universe. Dark energy is stretching the fabric of space faster than the speed of light, creating a shrinking event horizon that permanently locks away the vast majority of creation from us forever.
A full galaxy is never an empire. It is a profound and beautiful silence.
The physical universe is structurally hostile to dominion.
But, well, I want to leave you with a brand new concept to ponder here. Something that builds off all this physics we've discussed, but flips the perspective entirely.
Okay, let's hear it.
Our sources prove conclusively that any empire built in physical space is doomed by the speed of light and the tyranny of distance. The universe simply won't let you rule the stars.
The physical expansion outward is fundamentally blocked.
Blocked outward. But what if a truly advanced civilization realizes this? What if they spend thousands of years doing the math, they hit all these unbreakable walls, and they consciously decide to stop expanding outward into the void?
A shift in focus.
If you can't conquer the physical stars because you can't change the speed of light, do you turn inward instead?
That is a deeply fascinating avenue for speculation.
Think about it. What if the ultimate galactic empires don't exist in physical space at all? What if, instead of building slow, 1% light speed colony ships that are doomed to drift apart, a civilization builds vast, highly advanced simulated virtual universes inside local planetary-scale supercomputers?
Ah, the simulation hypothesis.
Inside a computer simulation, you can control the speed of light. You can rewrite the laws of physics. Inside a simulation, distance is no longer a tyrant.
That makes perfect sense.
An artificial intelligence or an uploaded consciousness could rule 1 trillion digital worlds, all contained perfectly within a server farm, sitting safely inside a single 12.5 light-year bubble.
It provides the ultimate solution to the Fermi paradox and the limits of physics. If the physical universe is an unyielding, expanding cage that isolates you, you use your immense technological capability to build a limitless universe within.
Exactly. Maybe the reason we don't see massive empires in the physical sky isn't just because physics forbids them, but because any civilization smart enough to actually build one realizes the real infinite frontier is inward.
The physical universe is just the raw material to power the servers of the virtual empire.
It certainly adds a profound layer of complexity to our view of the night sky. The silence might not be emptiness. It might simply be incredibly dense, highly localized processing power.
It really does completely change the narrative.
Remember how we started this deep dive? Looking up at the stars and seeing a static map just waiting for us to draw borders and plant our physical flags.
The illusion of the map?
Well, it turns out the map is violently moving, the territory is expanding faster than we can ever hope to paddle, and the ink we use to draw the borders takes 100,000 years to dry.
The universe isn't waiting for our flags.
It is perfectly content in its profound silence. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the absolute limits of interstellar dominion. Keep questioning the universe, keep looking up, and we'll see you next time.